The stars were cold and silent above the lonely outpost. The human station hung at the edge of known space, far from Earth, far from any colony, and far from any help. The crew of 20 lived in that small metal shell, surrounded by endless black. For months they had studied the strange signals in the region, but now their own signal was the only thing that mattered. The distress call had been sent. It repeated over and over, a desperate cry into the darkness. The commander of the outpost, Captain Elias Ward, sat in the control room and stared at the faint glow of the transmission panel. His voice had been calm when he recorded the message, but every word carried the weight of fear. This is Human Outpost Epsilon 9. We have sustained critical damage. Our systems are failing. We request immediate assistance. The words circled again and again, carried by invisible waves through the void. But no one answered. The silence after each transmission felt heavier than the blackness outside the station. The crew listened for a reply, their ears straining as if the vacuum itself might whisper something back. Hours passed. The oxygen recyclers made a low hum, weaker than before. Lights flickered in the hallways. The station was wounded, bleeding out its life slowly. And still, the only sound was the repeating call for help. Elias tried to hide his fear, but his crew could see it. He was tired, his face lined with sleepless nights. He walked through the corridors, checking on his people. Some were working on repairs, trying to keep the reactor stable. Others sat in silence, whispering prayers or staring at old photos from Earth. Everyone knew their chances were thin. There was no fleet nearby. No human colony within range. The only hope was that someone, anyone, might pick up the signal. Hours stretched into a day. Elias gathered the crew in the common room. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the truth. "We may not get a reply," he said. "But we must be ready if one comes. If it is human, we welcome them. If it is not, we must still be ready." A silence followed his words. Everyone understood what he meant. The distress signal was not selective. It was not safe. It called out to anyone who could hear. Friend or enemy, ally or predator. Somewhere beyond the stars, something could be listening. And perhaps it already was. In the observation deck, a young technician named Kara sat by the window, staring at the galaxy. She wondered who else might be out there, who else could be listening to their desperate cry. Her fingers tapped nervously on the glass, and she whispered, "Please, someone come." In the control room, the transmission panel flickered. A faint anomaly crossed the screen, like a ripple in the sea. The communication officer leaned closer. His eyes widened. "Captain, I think we have something." Elias rushed to the console. The signal was faint, broken, but it was not their own. It was a reply. Static hissed through the speakers. At first, it sounded like random noise, like the universe itself was sighing. Then words began to form, distorted but real. The crew leaned in, holding their breath. The voice was not human. It was deep, cold, and metallic. The words came slowly, as if dragged through the void. "We have received your call." A chill swept through the room. The communication officer turned pale. Elias clenched his jaw, his mind racing. This was no human fleet. This was no ally. Something else had heard them. Something far greater, far older, and far more dangerous than they could imagine. The signal repeated, clearer this time. "Your call has been heard. We are coming." No one spoke. The only sound was the steady, mechanical hum of the failing systems, and the distant echo of a promise that did not feel like salvation. It felt like judgment. Kara pressed her hands to her mouth. Her heart pounded so loud she thought the aliens might hear it through the comms. Around her, the crew exchanged fearful glances. Some whispered questions. Some froze in shock. The meaning was simple. Someone had answered. But the universe is vast, and not every answer is a gift. Captain Elias lowered his head for a moment, then looked back at his people. "Prepare yourselves," he said quietly. His voice was calm, but inside he felt the weight of an entire species pressing down on his shoulders. Humanity had sent out a cry for help. And now, something had replied. The stars outside the window seemed darker than before. The silence between the crew grew heavier. Far away, beyond human maps and charts, something stirred. The distress signal had been heard. And what was coming would shake not only the outpost, not only humanity, but perhaps the entire galaxy itself. The station floated in silence after the reply. No one moved. No one breathed. The alien voice still echoed in their minds, deep and metallic, like a shadow that clung to every word. "We have received your call. We are coming." The crew had wanted an answer. Now they had one, and it was worse than silence. Captain Elias Ward stood at the center of the control room, staring at the console as if more words might appear. His hands were tight against the railing, his knuckles pale. Around him, the crew looked to him for guidance, but for the first time since they had left Earth, Elias had no clear orders to give. He swallowed hard and forced his voice steady. "Check the signal again. Confirm it." The communication officer's fingers shook as he worked the console. Static filled the speakers. Faint whispers of something unnatural played like broken notes of a song. The officer looked up with wide eyes. "It's real, Captain. The source is out there. And it's moving." The room turned cold. They all understood what that meant. Whoever had answered was not just listening. They were coming closer. Outside the observation windows, the stars glittered as if nothing had changed, but every person on the station felt the weight of those hidden eyes, watching from the void. Hours passed in a tension so heavy it pressed down on every soul inside. The distress beacon continued to repeat, carrying humanity's weakness across the endless black. Elias ordered it shut down, but even after the signal went quiet, the damage was already done. Whoever had heard them already knew. In the mess hall, whispers spread among the crew. Some believed the aliens might still help, that they might be more advanced and kinder than humans expected. Others said no, that no true ally would sound so cold. Fear grew like a disease, silent and invisible. People looked at the doors as if expecting them to burst open at any moment. Kara, the young technician, sat in the corner, hugging her knees to her chest. She kept replaying the sound of that alien voice in her head. It did not sound curious. It did not sound friendly. It sounded like a predator that had just found prey. She tried to imagine what the beings might look like. Her stomach twisted. In the control room, Elias studied the charts. The communication officer tracked the approaching signal. The readings were faint, but growing stronger with every hour. Whatever was coming was massive. "Size?" Elias asked. The officer hesitated. "At least 5 times bigger than our largest carrier. Maybe more." A cold silence followed. Humanity had built great ships, but nothing like that. Elias felt the fear in his chest, but he refused to let it break him. "We stay calm," he said. "We prepare." His crew nodded, but he could see the doubt in their eyes. They were scientists, engineers, and a handful of guards. They were not a fleet. They were not a fortress. They were a single fragile outpost standing against something ancient and vast. As the hours dragged on, the waiting became torture. Every flicker of light in the corridor felt like a warning. Every sound of metal groaning against the cold vacuum made them flinch. The silence from the stars was worse than the alien voice itself. No message followed. No demand. No explanation. Just silence, and the knowledge that something enormous was moving toward them. Some crew members broke down. One man in the engineering bay screamed at the walls, begging for the voice to come back, begging for clarity instead of waiting in fear. Another quietly packed away a photo of his family, as if preparing for the end. Elias walked among them, giving what comfort he could. But he knew the truth. Words could not fight what was coming. On the second day, the anomaly appeared on their sensors. It was faint, like a shadow against the fabric of space. The readings showed impossible energy levels, higher than anything humans had ever recorded. The crew gathered in the control room, staring at the shifting blip on the screen. "That's them," the officer whispered. Kara's voice trembled. "They're close." The room was filled with dread. Every person felt the same thing. This was not rescue. This was not salvation. This was the answer of something that did not see them as equals. The silence from the alien ship was crushing. No greeting. No warning. No threat. Just the slow approach, like a beast circling its prey before the strike. Elias gripped the console, his voice calm but heavy. "Everyone prepare. Whatever they want, they will reveal soon. Until then, we hold." No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. Outside, the stars continued their eternal burn, cold and distant. But within the station, hearts beat fast and minds filled with terror. The silence had been broken once, and now it had returned, heavier than before. It was the silence before the storm, and the crew of Epsilon 9 knew they were trapped inside it. Somewhere in the vast dark, something massive and merciless was on its way. Humanity had called out for help. And the universe had answered with silence that promised only fear. The third day began like a slow nightmare. The crew barely slept, their minds heavy with the knowledge that something vast and unknown was approaching. The station floated in the void, powerless to hide, powerless to escape. In the control room, Captain Elias Ward stood at the viewing window with tired eyes, staring at the endless black. The stars shimmered, silent as always, but there was a weight in the darkness, a presence that was not there before. Kara sat at the console, her hands trembling as she checked the scanners again and again. The signal grew stronger every hour, its direction clear. The alien ship was coming straight toward them. No deviation. No hesitation. It had locked on to their position, and nothing would stop it. The communication officer spoke quietly, as if afraid the thing might hear. "Captain, they'll arrive within 6 hours." Elias nodded, his face calm but his heart pounding. Around him, the crew waited in silence, every tick of the clock pulling them closer to the unknown. The hours crawled like years. Then the sensors lit up. The anomaly was no longer just a blip on the screen. It was real, it was here. The energy readings spiked beyond anything humans had ever recorded. The crew rushed to the observation deck. Outside the glass, the darkness stirred. At first, it was only a faint shadow against the stars, like a trick of the eye. Then the shadow grew. A shape emerged, vast and endless, blotting out the constellations. The alien ship arrived. It was colossal, larger than cities, stretching across the void like a floating mountain of metal and light. The hull shimmered with strange symbols that seemed to shift when looked at directly. Towers rose from its surface, and massive glowing structures pulsed like beating hearts. The ship did not glide like human vessels. It did not burn fuel or flare with engines. It simply appeared, drifting silently into place, as if the void itself carried it. The crew gasped, some stepping back from the window. Kara clutched her mouth to stop a scream. "It's alive," she whispered, though no one knew if she meant the ship itself or the presence inside it. No signal came. No greeting. No warning. The alien ship simply hovered near the outpost, silent and massive, its bulk casting a shadow that swallowed the station. The lights inside the human station flickered as the alien vessel's energy field pressed against them. Every system groaned, as if the station itself felt fear. Elias forced his voice steady. "All stations report." Engineers scrambled to check the power grid. Guards tightened their grips on weapons they knew were useless. The communication officer kept scanning for signals, his face pale with dread. But the alien ship gave nothing. It only watched. Hours passed with that monstrous shadow hanging outside their windows. The crew moved like ghosts, whispering, waiting, fearing. Some said they should try to communicate, to send another message. Others begged Elias to stay silent, afraid of drawing the attention of whatever was inside. Elias stood alone in the control room, staring at the alien vessel. He felt the weight of every life on the station pressing on him. He thought of Earth, of humanity itself. This was not just about Epsilon 9 anymore. This was first contact, and it was not the contact humans had dreamed of. Suddenly, the silence broke. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through the walls, through the floors, through their very bones. Lights flickered and screens went dark. The alien ship was scanning them. The hum grew louder, pulsing like the beat of a monstrous heart. Kara screamed and covered her ears, but the sound was inside them, deeper than hearing. It was as if the ship itself was peeling back the layers of their souls. Then the sound stopped. The lights returned. And on the main screen, an image appeared. It was not a clear face. It was a silhouette, tall and armored, with eyes that glowed like burning stars. The voice followed, the same metallic tone as before, but louder, clearer, colder. "You called. We have come." The words echoed in the control room, making the crew flinch as if struck. Elias straightened, forcing himself to meet the gaze of the alien figure on the screen. His voice was calm, though his chest felt tight. "This is Captain Elias Ward of Human Outpost Epsilon 9. We thank you for answering our call. We request assistance." The alien figure tilted its head, almost curious. Then it spoke again, each word heavy with disdain. "Assistance is not why we are here. You should not be here. This place does not belong to your kind." The crew froze, their fear shifting to horror. The alien voice carried no mercy, no hint of friendship. Elias felt his heart sink, but he stood firm. "We mean no harm," he said carefully. "We only seek survival." The alien did not answer. The image flickered, and then vanished. The screen went black. Outside, the alien ship remained, silent and vast, watching. The crew looked to Elias, their faces pale. Some whispered prayers. Some gripped weapons tighter. But all of them knew the same truth. The aliens had not come to save them. They had come for something else. And whatever it was, the humans of Epsilon 9 were standing in their way. The silence after the alien message was heavier than death itself. The crew of Epsilon 9 sat frozen in the control room, their eyes locked on the black screen where the alien figure had appeared. Captain Elias Ward stood tall, though his legs felt weak beneath him. He had spoken to something not of Earth, something ancient and vast, and its words echoed in his mind like a curse. "You should not be here." The alien ship outside remained silent, but its shadow stretched across the station, a constant reminder of their smallness. Hours passed, and no further message came. The crew moved quietly, afraid to draw the attention of the massive vessel looming beyond their walls. They whispered to one another in the halls, their voices shaking. Some believed the aliens would destroy them soon. Others hoped they might test them first. Kara sat near the observation deck, her eyes fixed on the colossal shape outside. She wondered what beings inside that ship were thinking as they studied humanity. Did they see humans as weak? Did they see them as invaders? Or did they see them as something less, as prey to be judged and discarded? Suddenly the ship stirred. A beam of pale blue light shot out, striking the station and bathing it in cold energy. The crew screamed as systems flickered and alarms blared. The beam did not destroy them. It scanned them, moving across the hull like an invisible eye peeling back the layers of metal and flesh. Elias gripped the console, forcing his voice calm. "Hold positions. Do not fire. We don't provoke them." The guards hesitated, their hands on useless weapons, but obeyed. The light passed through every wall, every room, every living soul on board, leaving them trembling in its wake. Then the beam faded, and silence returned. A moment later, the screen in the control room lit again. The same tall armored figure appeared, its glowing eyes burning brighter. Its voice was deep, heavy with judgment. "We have looked inside. You are fragile. You are unprepared. And yet, you dare to call to us." The words stabbed into the crew like knives. One officer whispered, We never wanted this. We only asked for help. The alien's head turned, as if it had heard the whisper even across the stars. Help is not given. Worth must be proven. Elias stepped forward, his jaw set. Then tell us what you want. If we must prove ourselves, then say how. The alien paused, its glowing eyes narrowing. Then it spoke again. Survive. The screen went black. A sudden jolt shook the station. The crew stumbled as warning lights flashed red. External sensors screamed with new contacts. Small objects had separated from the alien vessel. They moved fast, surrounding the human station like a pack of predators circling prey. Drones, sleek and dark, with glowing cores that pulsed like fire. Their movements were perfect, coordinated, merciless. Kara gasped. They're testing us. The realization spread through the crew. The aliens would not destroy them outright. They would see if humans could endure. It was not a rescue. It was not a gift. It was a trial. Elias barked orders, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. All hands to battle positions. Engineers, stabilize power. Shields at maximum. Weapons ready. The crew moved quickly, fear driving their bodies faster than courage. The station's defenses were old, not built for war, but they armed them anyway. Turrets came online, targeting systems locked onto the circling drones. The first attack came swift and brutal. A drone shot a lance of energy that cut across the shields, shaking the station like a quake. Sparks flew in the corridors, and smoke filled the engineering bay. But the shields held, for now. Return fire. Elias ordered. Turrets spat bursts of plasma, streaks of light racing through the void. One drone exploded in a flash, its remains scattering like burning ash. The crew cheered, a spark of hope in the darkness. But more drones advanced. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. The station shook again and again as energy blasts hammered the shields. Metal groaned. Lights flickered. People screamed in the hallways. Elias stood firm, his voice loud and commanding. Hold the line. Show them what it means to be human. His words lit a fire in the crew. They fought with everything they had, their fear turning into fierce determination. Kara worked the targeting systems, her hands steady now, her eyes burning with focus. The turrets fired again, taking down another drone, then another. But the station was bleeding. Shields failed in sections. The outer hull cracked. Oxygen hissed from ruptured corridors. Still, the humans refused to surrender. On the alien ship, silent and distant, the armored figure surely watched. Perhaps it judged. Perhaps it measured. Elias knew it did not matter. What mattered was survival, proving that humanity was not fragile, not prey. The battle raged on, the void lit with fire and smoke. Every second felt like an eternity. The crew of Epsilon 9 fought not just for their station, but for the name of their species. This was first contact. And it was war. The station groaned under the strain of battle, its metal bones crying out as wave after wave of alien drones hammered its shields. The crew of Epsilon 9 fought with desperation, their faces streaked with sweat and soot, their hands raw from gripping consoles and weapons. Sparks rained from the ceiling as Kara locked targets with trembling fingers, her voice hoarse as she shouted updates. Drone down, 2 more incoming, shields at 20%. Every second felt like the last, yet somehow the station held. Captain Elias Ward stood at the center of the storm, his voice steady and commanding, even as his heart pounded with fear. Hold your ground. They want to see us break. Don't give them that satisfaction. His words carried strength, and the crew clung to them like lifelines. Then, without warning, the attack stopped. The drones froze in place, circling silently, their glowing cores dimmed but not extinguished. The battlefield became still, filled only with the crackle of burning circuits and the hiss of leaking oxygen. The crew panted, exhausted, waiting for the next blow. On the main screen the alien figure returned, its eyes burning brighter than before. The metallic voice filled the room like thunder. You resist. You fight. Yet this is not enough. Survival is not won by chance. It is earned through fire. Elias straightened, his jaw tight. Then test us, he said, his voice calm though every muscle in his body ached. The alien tilted its head, and the drones moved again, but this time they did not fire. Instead they spread out, creating a shifting pattern around the station. Panels lit up across the human screens, showing strange symbols and paths. Kara's eyes widened as she tried to interpret the data. Captain, they're setting up some kind of trial. The alien voice echoed again. You will endure 3 trials. Pass, and you may live. Fail, and you will be erased. The crew exchanged fearful glances, but Elias gave a single nod. We accept. The first trial began immediately. The alien drones released bursts of electromagnetic energy, disabling systems one by one. Lights went dark, consoles shut down, and the station plunged into shadow. Panic rippled through the crew as life support faltered. Oxygen levels dropped, and people gasped for air. Kara's hands flew across dead screens, trying to reroute power. Engineers in the lower decks worked by flashlight, sweat pouring down their faces as they rewired circuits with trembling fingers. Elias barked orders, his voice cutting through the darkness. Stay calm. Manual overrides, keep the systems alive. The crew worked together, their fear turning into determination. Minutes felt like hours as they struggled, but slowly lights flickered back, one by one, until the hum of life support returned. A cheer rose in the control room, weak but real. The first trial was survived. The alien voice returned. 1 test passed. 2 remain. The second trial came without warning. The drones released pods that latched onto the hull. A shriek of metal filled the corridors as claws tore into the walls. The pods cracked open, releasing mechanical beasts, machines shaped like spiders, their legs sharp as blades, their glowing eyes hunting for prey. Screams echoed through the hallways as the creatures scuttled inside, slicing through doors and chasing the crew. Guards fired rifles, their bullets sparking off metal hides, but the machines were fast, deadly. Kara hid behind a console as one burst into the control room, its legs tearing through steel. Elias grabbed a fallen guard's weapon and fired until the core of the beast exploded in a burst of sparks. Fight them back, he roared, his voice echoing through the comms. The station became a battlefield. In the engineering bay, one machine pinned an officer to the ground, its legs poised to strike, but another crewman leapt with a wrench and smashed its glowing core. In the corridors, guards fired in tight groups, slowly cutting down the monsters one by one. Blood mixed with smoke, screams with shouts of defiance. After endless minutes of chaos, the last machine fell, burning in pieces. The crew stood among wreckage, panting, bleeding, alive. Elias wiped sweat and soot from his face, his chest heaving. Second trial. Complete, he muttered. As if in answer, the alien appeared again, its voice calm but heavy. You fight well. 1 trial remains. The third and final test came like a nightmare. The alien ship released a massive sphere of light, glowing brighter than a star. Sensors screamed warnings as radiation levels spiked. Kara's eyes widened in horror. Captain, it's going to overload the station. The sphere pulsed, sending waves of energy that fried systems and boiled circuits. The shields flared, then collapsed. The station shook like it would tear apart. Crew members were thrown to the ground, consoles exploded, and smoke filled every corner. Elias held onto the railing, shouting over the chaos. Redirect all power to the core. If we don't stabilize it, we're finished. Engineers scrambled, rerouting what little energy remained. Sparks burned their hands, smoke choked their lungs, but they worked. Kara forced her hands through fire-scorched controls, teeth gritted as she rerouted power into failing shields. The sphere pulsed again, brighter, stronger. The hull screamed like it was alive, tearing apart under the force. People cried out, but still they fought. At the last moment the system stabilized, the shields flickered alive, and the energy wave broke apart around them. The sphere dimmed, then vanished into the void. The silence that followed was total. Every crew member stood frozen, chests heaving, eyes wide, alive but shattered. Then the alien voice returned, quieter this time, almost thoughtful. You endure. You bleed. Yet you remain. Perhaps your kind is not prey. The screen went black, and the drones withdrew, vanishing back into the colossal ship. The crew stared in silence, realizing they had survived the test, but also knowing this was not the end. Humanity had proven something to the stars, and the galaxy would never forget. The station was broken, burned, and filled with the smell of smoke and blood, but it was still alive, and so were the people inside it. The crew of Epsilon 9 stood in silence after the final trial, their chests heaving, their faces streaked with ash and sweat. They had survived 3 tests set by an alien race beyond their understanding, and though the victory felt fragile, it was real. Captain Elias Ward looked around the control room at his people, each of them exhausted yet standing, each of them proving that humanity could not be crushed so easily. The alien ship remained outside, massive and silent, watching. No drones attacked, no beams scanned, no more trials came. The voice that had thundered through their bones was gone, but its last words lingered like fire. Perhaps your kind is not prey. Elias felt those words burn into his mind. It was not a compliment. It was not respect. It was a warning. Humanity had caught the attention of something vast and merciless, and now the galaxy knew they existed. He could not allow that knowledge to be one of weakness. He gathered his crew, his voice low but sharp. They think we are only survivors. We must show them we are fighters too. The room stirred, weary eyes lifting with sparks of determination. Kara stepped forward, her hands still shaking from the battle, her voice soft but firm. Captain, we can strike back. The scans we took during the trials, they left data behind. Weak points in their drones, maybe even in their ship. Engineers nodded, pulling up damaged screens and broken charts. Despite the chaos, the station had recorded fragments of alien energy signatures. Patterns emerged, showing that even these giants had flaws. Elias clenched his fists. Good. Then we fight on our terms. The plan was risky, reckless, almost suicidal, but they had no other choice. If they remained passive, the aliens would leave seeing only fragile survivors. If they struck, even once, even for a moment, the message would echo across the stars: humanity does not kneel. The crew worked tirelessly, patching what systems they could, welding broken hulls, rerouting energy into the last remaining weapons. The station trembled with every repair, its structure fragile as glass, but they kept going. No one slept. No one hesitated. They all knew what was at stake. Hours later the preparations were complete. The alien ship still hovered nearby, silent and endless, its glowing towers pulsing slowly like the heartbeat of a god. Drones circled lazily, no longer attacking, as if the humans had been dismissed as unworthy of further attention. Elias saw opportunity in that arrogance. He stood at the command console, his voice calm. Target the nearest drone cluster. Focus all weapons. On my mark. Kara's fingers hovered over the controls, sweat dripping down her face. The engineers held their breath, hands shaking as they pushed failing power into the weapon systems. The crew waited, the silence before the strike pressing into their ears. Elias raised his hand. Mark. The station roared to life, every turret firing at once. Plasma streaked across the void, slamming into the cluster of drones. Explosions flared like sudden stars, 3 drones shredded into burning fragments, 2 more spinning out of formation. The alien ship stirred, its towers pulsing brighter, its silence breaking with a low, rumbling hum. For the first time the humans had struck back. The crew cheered, their voices rising above the alarms, but Elias did not smile. His eyes stayed locked on the alien vessel, waiting for its answer. It came quickly. More drones launched, hundreds of them, surrounding the station in a storm of light. The alien voice thundered again, filled with anger this time. You dare. The words shook the walls, rattled the bones of everyone who heard them, but Elias stood tall, his voice rising to meet it. "We are human. We will never bow." The crew fired again, and the battle resumed. Drones swarmed like locusts, their energy beams tearing into the fragile shields, ripping metal apart, but the humans fought with cunning. Instead of meeting the swarm head-on, they used the data Kara had found. Targeting weak energy nodes, they struck with precision. Each hit sent drones spiraling out of control, crashing into one another. The station itself was failing, but the crew adapted, moving power from one system to another, using their ingenuity to outthink the machines. In the chaos, one engineer made a desperate choice, overriding safeties and rerouting the reactor directly into a single turret. The weapon overloaded, glowing red, then fired a shot so powerful it pierced the hull of a massive command drone, tearing it apart in a flash of light. The station shook from the recoil, systems collapsing, but the crew shouted with triumph. They were breaking the swarm, proving they could not only endure trials but strike down their hunters. The alien ship watched, silent again, its glowing towers pulsing with unreadable rhythm. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the drones pulled back. They drifted away from the battered human station, returning to the colossal vessel. The silence that followed was filled with the sound of burning wires and gasping breaths. The alien voice spoke once more, not with anger now, but with something colder, heavier. "You fight. You think. You endure. This is noted." The screen went black, and the alien ship began to move, slowly drifting away into the dark. The crew stood in stunned silence, their bodies trembling, their minds reeling. They had survived. They had fought back. And they had been seen. Elias looked out the viewing window at the fading light of the alien ship, his voice quiet but firm. "They came to test us. We showed them who we are. Let them carry that truth across the stars." The crew nodded, some with tears in their eyes, some with fierce smiles. Humanity had answered the test not only with survival but with defiance. And now, the galaxy knew that mankind was not prey. The alien ship drifted away into the endless dark, leaving behind silence and the broken shell of Epsilon 9 station. The crew stood in the wreckage, too tired to cheer, too stunned to cry. They had faced the unknown and lived. But far beyond the ruined station, in corners of the galaxy untouched by human eyes, others were already listening. The signal of the trial, the test, and the defiance of humanity had traveled across channels unseen, carried by alien networks, intercepted by civilizations both ancient and young. On a world of fire and sand, a reptilian race known for conquering weaker species gathered in their war chambers, their yellow eyes gleaming as they replayed the moment humanity struck down the drones. One of their generals hissed, his voice sharp. "They are new. They are fragile. But they are not prey. If they spread, they will challenge us." The council debated whether to crush humanity now or watch them grow, but even they could feel the weight of what had happened. In another corner of space, in cities built among gas clouds and floating platforms, a peaceful race of scholars studied the transmission with wonder. They had seen empires rise and fall, but this was different. A species so young had been thrown into fire, tested by one of the oldest hunters in the galaxy, and survived. One scholar whispered to another, "They may be dangerous, yes, but they may also be hope." On a frozen world lit by dying stars, a hive of insectoid beings clicked their mandibles in debate. They had long avoided the ancient hunters, hiding in the shadows, fearing their tests. Now, hearing of humanity's defiance, some felt courage stir for the first time in centuries. Across the galaxy the echoes spread, whispered in markets, discussed in councils, feared in warships. Humanity was no longer invisible. Back on Epsilon 9, Elias stood at the cracked viewing glass, staring at the trail of stars. His crew moved quietly around him, repairing what little could be saved, but their eyes often turned to their captain. He knew what they all felt. They had survived, yes, but the test was only the beginning. The galaxy now knew of their existence, and soon more would come, some curious, some fearful, some hungry. Kara approached, her voice soft. "Do you think they will return?" Elias did not look away from the stars. "Not them. Others. Word will spread. We will no longer be alone. There was no comfort in his words, only truth. In the weeks that followed, the damaged station became a symbol. Messages were sent back to Earth, and the story spread across human colonies. For the first time, mankind looked at the stars not with wonder alone, but with caution and pride. They were not the only ones, and they were not the weakest. On Earth, leaders argued in secret chambers. Some wanted to hide, to avoid drawing more attention. Others demanded fleets, weapons, defenses built with urgency. Ordinary people watched the broadcasts, their hearts racing with fear but also swelling with pride. Humanity had faced the darkness and shouted back. Across alien space, the hunters who had tested them sat in silence, recording, analyzing. They had seen countless species break, surrender, or die. Few had fought back. Even fewer had survived. Humanity's defiance was rare, and rare things drew attention. Perhaps one day they would test again. Perhaps they would watch from afar. Or perhaps they had already decided something greater, and humanity had unknowingly stepped onto a path that could not be turned back. On the battered station, the crew repaired the last surviving beacon and sent one final message into the void. It was short, clear, defiant. This is humanity. We will endure. We will fight. We will not kneel. The signal traveled outward, a spark racing into endless night, a challenge and a promise all in one. In markets, in palaces, in shadowy war fleets, beings of every kind would hear it. Some would smile. Some would tremble. Some would plan. The galaxy, once silent about mankind, now whispered their name with interest. Elias turned from the stars, his voice low but steady. The test is over. The war for the future has just begun. His crew nodded, their faces lit not only with fear but with the fire of belief. They had survived the trial of giants, and though they knew greater storms were coming, they would not run. They would not hide. Humanity had been seen. Humanity had been tested. And now, humanity would rise.